Well, hello there, everybody. Kyle Nedner up here from the Indy Star and talking some high school football tonight, sectional championship games around the area, and some good games tonight. I had Lawrence North, number one, beat Cathedral tonight 24-7. Going to talk a little bit about that game. We'll be joined by some guests here, hopefully, and if the lights go out here in the Lawrence North press box, I'm going to have to get the motion detector going to get the lights back on. But definitely want to talk some high school football tonight, and hopefully get Mark Janes on here. Mark, you with me?
Yeah, I'm here, Kyle.
Well, Mark, you were at. I'm guessing you were at the game, right? The Brownsburg Ben Davis game tonight.
Yeah, my son has been on the defensive staff at Ben Davis for 2 years now, and but while my beloved Monrovia Bulldogs were at Lutheran tonight, family always comes first, as you know, Kyle. So my wife and I were at Ben Davis for one whale of a football game. It is always the case when Brownsburg and Ben Davis get together.
Well, Mark, I was following this game. You were tweeting out some of the some of the results as the game was going along, and Ben Davis got out to a 35-7 lead. And I was from another person. I was getting messages that it might be a running clock in the second half, and then all of a sudden, it's a ball game. And Brownsburg got it to a 2-touchdown game early in the fourth quarter, and then goes on to win 38-35. And that sets up next week. Lawrence North will play Brownsburg in the 6A regional. But Mark, how did this happen? A 28-point deficit to a Brownsburg victory, almost a reversal of last year, even more so, coming back in the fourth quarter of that game. But how did this happen for Brownsburg?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a matter of adjustments in the second half, and clearly Brownsburg, a veteran staff led by the legendary John Hart, put together a really solid game plan in that second half. I can't remember specifically, Kyle. I think if Ben Davis had a first down in the second half, they may have had one. They looked to take a bit of a conservative approach because they ran the football much more in the second half than they did in the first half. And you got to credit Brownsburg's stingy defense. I mean, Joe Goss, I think he bears watching. He's in the class of 2027. Sophomore quarterback in Ben Davis. He had 5 touchdown passes in the first half, 3 of those to Mark Zachary. And so, the cupboard's far from bare. And I think once the dust settles for Russ Mann and his squad, they'll look forward to the offseason. But offensively, Oscar Fry, Evan Robinson just had a tremendous second half for Brownsburg. The secondary of Ben Davis, quite frankly, had no answer for them. It was really an incredible set of circumstances, Kyle, because it was 2 vastly different halves of football. And, John Hart and Brownsburg have had this game circled on their calendar for a while. They were hoping to get another crack at Ben Davis at some point in the sectional after that tough loss a year ago. But as is often the case, especially in Central Indiana and 6A, the road certainly doesn't get any easier for them because they'll take on a very good Lawrence North football team next week. And you go back to Ben Davis, the defending state champions, you talk about a tough road, Kyle. I mean, they beat number 1, number 2, and number 4 to get to the state championship last year. And it's going to take a similar road to get that done again out of the southern half of the state this year.
Yeah, Mark, and this is such a wide open year. It seems like that. It's interesting to me. You could argue Brownsburg and Ben Davis were both better last year. And certainly Ben Davis went on to win the state championship and lost a lot, especially on the defensive side from that team. Brownsburg was also an excellent team last year and had that Ben Davis team down in the sectional and couldn't quite finish it. But must be pretty fulfilling for John Hart and his crew tonight to get this win. Mark, that last drive, and you're right, Avon Robinson, watching our highlights from Clark Wade, looked like Avon Robinson had a huge second half. But, Mark, that last drive, Brownsburg got the field goal looked relatively short. Was that a pretty easy field goal?
Yeah, the ball was spotted at the 4-yard line. So, I mean, it's essentially an extra point. They've had a strong kicking game most of the year, and it was pretty much a chip shot field goal. They did a great job of managing the clock and getting themselves in a position for the game-winning field goal. Tough way to win for Ben Davis, no question, but you got to take your hat off to John Hart and his staff. You got to keep playing, and there's no tougher message to get across to your kids than to tell them at halftime at 35-7 that you're by no means out of it. And they took it a possession at a time on both sides of the football. And like I said, a tremendous amount of adjustments by their staff, at halftime made a big, big difference in getting them a win. And I don't know, folks, moving forward, anytime in the future, no matter what the regular season records might be, when Brownsburg and Ben Davis gets together, if you don't really have a team playing elsewhere, I suggest you get there, because these two teams have been worth the price of admission for a number of years now.
Absolutely. A good West Side rivalry, and Brownsburg gets the better end of it this time. And like I said, they will play Lawrence North. I'm assuming that game will be at Brownsburg because they haven't played a home game yet. So
yep.
That is likely the case, right, Mark?
Yep. I think that whoever won tonight was due to host next week. That's right.
Gotcha. Well, again, thanks, Mark. Voice of the Indy 500, of course, and he does a lot of work on the Champions Network. And Mark, I knew you were there tonight and would have a good handle on what happened tonight's game, and appreciate you coming on with me.
Well, like you, no rest for the weary. I'll get up early in the morning and I'll do the 1 and 2A volleyball state championships on the IHSAA Champions Network. So it's a fun time of the year for guys like you and me. Thanks for all you do for student athletes, Kyle. You do a tremendous job. You're the absolute best at what you do, and it's an honor to be with you tonight. Thanks for the invite.
You bet. Thank you, Mark. And now joining me, Brian Alt. Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I got you, man. Brian was covering the Chatard Roncalli game for us tonight, and I was able to just kind of see what happened there, Brian. That obviously Chatard wins the game, 28-24. Brian, I know looked like Roncalli had a chance down the stretch there, got the ball down the field, and looked like an interception late.
Yes, that's exactly what happened, and Chatard really took the lead on a big pass from the quarterback Harrington. That was late there in the fourth quarter, and it kind of looked like that was a turning point of the game. But on that last series, Roncalli got the ball back, and they had time to go down the field and score a little bit. The last drive there for them was definitely very interesting. At one point, they were backed up to a 2nd and 17, and everybody thought it was kind of over for good. But the quarterback Buchanan, he made a play, and the receiver number 10, I'm spacing his name right now, but I think it was Colin Ash. He was also a quarterback throughout the night occasionally, but he was able to kind of meander his way on that 2nd and 17 and make it a 3rd and 3. And then they wound up converting, and later on in that series, they kind of faced a 4th and 2, and so they obviously they went for it because they needed a touchdown in order to win. A field goal wouldn't have worked out or done anything to help them, but they converted there. But then at the end of the game, Chatard's safety prospect, or safety player, he wound up making an interception on Buchanan, and that really all but sealed the win. So it was a really good, hard-fought game between both teams. Both teams looked really, really well coached and very well. It was just a really, really good matchup, and it was more of a high-scoring affair than their regular season game. I know Chatard won that one 9-3, I believe, and this one had a lot more excitement to it for sure.
Absolutely. It looked like a fun game. And Brian, again, Brian Alt covered the game for us tonight, the Chatard victory over Roncalli. So Chatard now moves into the Class 4A regional to play New Pal next week. Brian, what was, it looked like Chatard was able to move the ball through the air tonight. You mentioned Harrington and 215 passing yards tonight for Chatard. Was that kind of their best mode of offense tonight?
Yes, it was for sure. That pass there was there in the fourth quarter was probably the most explosive play of the game. I guess you could say. Obviously he's a very good player. I was talking with the coaches before the game, and they think he has a bright future in terms of possible recruiting. If he can, assuming everything goes well, but yeah, he that was really their best play of the game. Really the best play of the game for both sides. And it was just kind of a wide open pass there, and he delivered it. And so, They definitely look, like a good team. They'll move on to play New Pal, and that should be a good game as well.
Yeah, I think that's a game everybody's kind of been looking forward to this year. Brian, how did Roncalli, I know, has kind of used both quarterbacks, Colin Ash and Jaden Buchanan this year. Was that sort of what they were doing tonight? Was playing both those guys?
Yeah, they really did. Sometimes it was kind of tough to figure out which one was in, but just because of how similar they are. But yeah, that's kind of how they operated tonight, and they had a lot of success doing it. And I know Sam Otley, the head coach there, he's in his first year. He really talked a lot about after the game about his senior class and the effort that they put into that game and throughout the season to make them, a winning program again. And I think he's done a really outstanding job as a head coach, as a first-year head coach, to go in and flip his team's record and to be able to do that, with all things considered. I think he's done a really amazing job, and I think he's definitely, someone who wants to be there as a head coach, and he wants to improve and grow as much as he can. So I think bright things are ahead for sure for Roncalli.
Yeah, definitely. Roncalli was playing their best football at the end of this season, but they will. And I'm going to make sure this light stays on here. Sorry about that, Brian. I've got to make sure this light stays on. It's a motion detector up here in the press box. I'm the last one here, so just making sure it stays on. But definitely Roncalli playing their best football at the end of the year. But Chatard moves on. They'll play New Pal next week in the regional. That's a game I think everybody's kind of been looking forward to. And anything else, Brian, that you wanted to add, or anything you saw tonight that kind of stood out to you?
I would just say I think that game will be really good. I went and saw New Pal a couple of weeks ago, and I think that will be definitely be a very good matchup. I also know, just kind of a note, kind of wrote it down. The left tackle there for Chatard is a very good player. He'll be kind of a name to know, I think, on recruiting radars. And so, but yeah, it was a good game, good night, and I'm sure it'll be a good game for them next week and in their matchup.
Absolutely. Thanks for popping on here, Brian.
Absolutely, 100%. Have a good night.
You too. Well, thanks a lot, Brian Alt, for joining me here. And again, Roncalli falls to Chatard tonight, a close game, 28-24. So Chatard moves on. Chatard will now play New Pal next week in the regional. Big game. I think everybody's kind of been looking forward to the potential of that matchup down the road, and now it'll be here this week. So that should be a fun one tonight. Looking through some of the other scores, and actually got Greg Rakestraw here. Going to add him. Hello, Greg.
Hello again. I see you have not left the press box yet.
No, I'm usually the last one unless I get kicked out. I'm normally the last one in here, or in my car, whichever. But glad Mike Penrose is able to let me stay up here for a little bit. And Greg covered the game for the ISC Network tonight, the Lawrence North Cathedral game. And Greg, I thought it was just it didn't feel like an upset. I talked to some of the players about that, and very matter of fact about, hey, we expected to win this game. And that's honestly what it felt like tonight. What was your impressions?
No, I think they were the favorite going in. When you're number one, you deserve to be the team that's expected to win. I'm not sure what type of game I expected tonight. I'm not sure. I thought that it would be one where the LN defense outscored the Cathedral offense. And obviously, my buddy Scott Eaker, who I have known for well over a quarter of a century, that was on the other side of you as you had two broadcasters flanking you tonight. At the end of the game, he said, listen, the better team won. But obviously, the Cathedral fans will be left to kind of wonder what might have happened if Cameron Coors been able to finish the game. The LN defense was just punishing tonight in terms of knocking out Coors, but just the physicality they played with. I think it's easy for all of us to kind of sit here and talk about, how good LN has been offensively this year, and to some degree almost gloss over what they have done defensively. Tonight was the night where their defense took a star turn, with Breck Mallory having an interception return for a touchdown, having a fumble return for a touchdown. But the way they played tonight is the way they have played all season long. So congratulations for Lawrence North, and now they get the test of Brownsburg coming up next week.
Well, I asked Pat Mallory after the game, I said, what if I would have told you Breck Mallory would lead you in touchdowns tonight? And he said, you'd have to tell me how that would have happened. And, sure enough, he hadn't scored a touchdown this season, and he gets 2 tonight. And I thought, really, Greg, the first one, after it felt like Cathedral missed some opportunities to kind of take control of the game. And then all of a sudden, Mallory scores that touchdown. And I think everybody kind of breathed a little bit of a sigh of relief on the Lawrence North side. Like, okay, now we got this touchdown. And then it kind of progressed from there. Isaiah Moore got that big run to start the second half. Mallory, of course, picks up the other fumble, returns it. And by that point, it felt like the game was over.
Correct. And once it got to a 14-0 game, and obviously that is when it was the backup quarterback, the sophomore, and Moore for Cathedral that had thrown all of one pass all season long. When he went out there to start the second quarter and you have that fumble and they're already down 14-0, game's over at that point. And again, we don't know what would have happened had the quarterback injury not happened. But at the same time, the first drive for Cathedral, blocked field goal attempt from just shy of 50. Then you turn it over on downs. And really, until the last drive of the game, there was no traction, for Cathedral offensively in the contest. That's a Cathedral playmaker group at wide receiver that's pretty impressive, and they didn't have a chance to make plays. And even when Coors was in the game, his timing is off because of the blitzing that he saw, from Lawrence North defensively. So, again, LN, it wasn't their best performance offensively. It didn't need to be because of how good they were on defense and special teams. And special teams has not always been a strength of Lawrence North. It's a strength of their team this year. Absolutely.
That's a great point. I think the offense may have been the least impressive
yes.
of the categories, which is that saying so. I think that's actually a good sign moving forward. Not that the offense, and Cathedral's defense had something to do with that as well, but I think the defense and the special teams, you can lean on those two areas. And, Lawrence North, a great game. Greg, anything else that, beyond this game stood out to you tonight? I was a little surprised that Decatur Central handled Plainfield as easily as they did. Obviously, I talked to Mark Janes about the Brownsburg comeback win over Ben Davis. That was quite a game on the west side there. But anything else that really stood out to you from a Central Indiana perspective tonight?
No, I knew that Roncalli would give Chatard a great game, and frankly, they gave him a great game the first time. It's just a very low-scoring game. But given, having beaten Brebeuf twice, and that East Central win was a really good win for Roncalli at the end of the season. Even Northview win in round one, Northview was an 8-1 football team this year. Mm-hmm. So Roncalli had it rolling. So the fact that Chatard, holds them off, certainly, catches your attention. The fact that Greenwood was as close to upsetting Martinsville as they were, obviously gets your attention. And Martinsville, it's kind of had the benefit of they haven't had to kind of turn it back on, since the end of the regular season. Well, now they do. And the four teams that we thought would kind of be left standing in the 4A bracket in the South are there in terms of New Pal, Chatard, Martinsville, and Wrights all making it through, to the regional round. To a certain degree, Decatur Central put it on Plainfield the way they did catches your attention. But at the same time, maybe we changed our opinion of Decatur Central because of how they stumbled out of the gate. But before the season started, they were the team that we all said, hey, we think this is the best team in 5A, and they just might be the best team in 5A. How things kind of play out. So, I don't other than the massive Brownsburg comeback, that's going to be the story of the night in 6A locally. That and the overall quality of the Mudsock game with Fishers getting the winning score with 4 seconds left to go.
Yeah, I'm hoping to talk to Rich Torres, who was there for us tonight, about that game. That was a wild one. Fishers wins that game 44-41 over HSC. Some of the other games, I think, Greg, were sort of games, like you said, that we thought might happen the way they did. I was hoping Lebanon would be able to get through and win. They hadn't won a sectional since 1997, but Huntington North wins in overtime in that game. And I know that's a program, too, that hadn't won in a long time either. First sectional title since 1993. And then Tri-West was able to get through Guerin tonight, 21-12. And I know obviously with Malachi Walden out, they were able to still win that game. So credit the Bruins and Coach Jason Ward. That's a big win for that program.
Yes, it is. There were some other first-timers in terms of sectional champs that are not exactly Central Indiana. I want to make sure we recognize them. My buddy Josh Edwards at Eastern High School, first sectional championship in program history. They have been good the last few years. That has been kind of their last hurdle to overcome as they beat Tipton. Congratulations to Rob Padgett at Taylor. You know, Rob was out of coaching for a long time. Taylor's first sectional championship in program history. Congratulations them at the 1A level. You know, Rob couldn't get it turned around at Northwestern. Caleb Small did this season. You know, Rob maybe laid some of the groundwork for him. And back in my neck of the woods, growing up, even though I've been here now for 30 years, North Harrison, a first-time sectional winner, beating Madison 8-7. You know, I grew up in Harrison County. 2 of the 4 teams played, and you knew there was kind of going to be one guaranteed win when they played each other, and that was about it. It has always been a struggle to have competitive football. The level of football has gotten better in Southern Indiana. It has to be able to keep up with people. North Harrison has been solid most years, but congratulations to the Cougars on their first sectional championship in program history as well.
8-7. That sounds like a game that was played in the mud or something like that. Was it muddy down there tonight?
I have no idea, and I couldn't tell you whether it was at Madison or North Harrison. But yeah, that sounds like an old school throwback game, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I will say too, Greg. How I don't know. You know, Crown Point is a team out there that you know, we saw them in the state championship last year. You know, they ran into a Ben Davis, one of those teams that you're just not going to beat on that turf and in that situation. But Crown Point's pretty darn good. A lot of those guys are back from last year. I know that, but their schedule's just been where it's hard to judge them exactly. But 35-0, they beat Penn tonight. I really think that's a team out there that maybe people aren't thinking about that, you know, they're going to be probably, you know, they're going to have to beat Carroll next week, but they could be again playing, you know, Fishers or Westfield in the semi-state with a chance to play for a spot at Lucas Oil again.
Correct. And I haven't gone as far as to see where that semi-state game would be. In other words, like I do expect Crown Point to win that game. But again, to Carroll's credit, you know, Carroll went out and played a great, taking advantage of the Summit Athletic Conference, redoing their scheduling, especially allow those bigger schools to come down to Indianapolis and play better teams in week 1 and week 2. I think we said about Crown Point is spot on. And it's, you know, this is athletic directoring 101. You know, do you play the teams that are closer to home in your 2, you know, non-conference games to get a bigger gate and to save yourself on travel? And if memory serves me right, Crown Point and Penn play like in week 2, I think, of the season on a regular basis. So you have found the other best 6A team that you can find in your kind of quarter of the state. Crown Point plays a wonderful 5A schedule. You know, that's where the best teams in 5A kind of tend to be, you know, being in the Duneland Conference. So they see Michigan City and Maryville and Chesterton and Valparaiso. Those are all really good football teams, but those are amongst, like, you know, top 30, top 40 teams in the state, where the teams in Indianapolis that are 6A play the top 10, top 15 teams in the state. What I would say is this: the gap between a really good Crown Point team and the best team in the state this year is probably noticeably smaller than it was a year ago. You know, LN is a very good team. Are they last year's Ben Davis team? Probably not. So that, you know, I think it's not a quality schedule. It's not an Indy 6A schedule. I think that has mitigated a little bit this year because the best Indy area 6A teams aren't as good, and because of the experience that Crown Point had from a season ago.
Yeah, that's a great point. I asked Bill Peebles tonight, how good is this LN team? And he said, "Oh, it's a good year to be good." And I kind of, you know, it's paraphrasing basically, but you know, that's sort of the point he made is, you know, that it's a good year for them to have this team and they're taking advantage of it. And we'll see if they can, you know, Brownsburg is going to be tough. I wanted to ask you, Greg, too, before I let you go here. Next week, you're going to have Warren Central playing Center Grove. And I know you've seen both those teams this year. Center Grove beat Franklin Central tonight 52-14. Warren rolls over Perry Meridian 48-3, I believe that one was. But, you know, these are the this is the game we expected all year, even before the season starts. You pretty much know those teams are probably going to play in the regional. Right. Very interesting game to me. Center Grove was probably not overall as strong, but they are strong in very important areas on the team, and they're always good in November, obviously. Warren's got a team where I think they've kind of figured out who they are. Great defense. They can run. What's your, just a kind of a takeaway on this game that we'll see next week? And again, not a surprise these teams are playing each other, but I'm pretty intrigued by how that game will unfold.
Can Center Grove's receivers get open against Warren's defense? I think that's the big question. I saw Center Grove in week 8 when Lawrence North beat them. Gabe McWilliams has had a good season. They scored 20 against LN. For comparison purposes, LN beat Warren by 26. LN beat Center Grove by 14, so take that for what you will. Again, Warren Central is average offensively. If they lean into the running game, I think they can be better. I think Center Grove is good, not great defensively. So I really kind of think it's almost a race to 20. If Center Grove can get 3 touchdowns against that Warren defense, I think that will be enough. But it is obviously strength versus strength. And I don't know if I'd go as far as saying, weakness versus weakness. I don't think the Center Grove defense is bad. But I do think the Warren Central offense, to be blunt, they've had 3 weeks to figure it out because they knew in that sectional that you would get the bye week and then you would be able to get past your competition pretty handily from a 6A level. And so as Warren developed their offense a little bit more, time will tell. But Warren defensively is as good as any team in the state. Center Grove offensively can move the ball. Can they do it against Warren? That's a bit of a tougher task.
Yeah, that'll be a fun game. I can't wait to see how that one goes. Really, all these games, once we get to this time of year, is a lot of fun. But Greg, appreciate you coming on here and joining me and talking some football. You're always a wealth of knowledge. And again, Greg from the ISC Network had the same game I did tonight, so we were both have a lot of the same takeaways. It wasn't really that exciting of a game, I would say, but I think that kind of speaks to how good LN is this year.
And again, and LN won without their best offensive effort, and credit Cathedral's defense. They were great. And a lot of times you kind of go, okay, can somebody take a page off of what this team did defensively to kind of thwart LN? I'm not sure you can, because Cathedral plays such a unique defense, that 3-5-3. I'm not sure teams can kind of copycat that. So in other words, you may have seen LN's worst offensive game of the rest of the season. I'm not sure anybody slows them down the way that Cathedral did tonight.
You gotta love Davion Chandler. He's not only playing these games, he's working on his recruiting class at IU. He's trying to get guys to come over. He's just he never stops.
No, and by all accounts, Lance Scheib knows him very well. He trains with Lance, and Lance swears by the kid. Says he is a phenomenal person. So he may have 3 more weeks worth of platform for sales pitch. Let's put it that way.
I say so. I appreciate you, Greg. Thank you.
Thanks, Kyle.
Whoa, hello.
Hello, Rich. We're now joined by Rich Torres, and Rich had the HSC Fishers game tonight. Rich, I'm curious about this game because it ends up 44-41. Fishers moves on, and I haven't read everything that happened so far. So, kind of take me through the end of this game and how Fishers was able to win it.
Well, it was the epitome of a 2-minute drive, 2 minutes and 3 seconds. Fishers needed to do something. They gave up the go-ahead touchdown to HSC. Kind of a problematic drive there for Fishers. They had 3 key penalties, including 2 15-yarders that kind of pushed that drive towards the end zone. So they fell behind. They had 2:03 left, and they ended up getting first and goal with less than 10 seconds left, and they throw 3 incomplete passes, and then a timeout is taken by HSC with 6.5 seconds left. So both teams reset for that final play, and miracles do happen here in playoff time, right? So, you have they're basically Fisher's number 2 quarterback because of an injury that happened earlier this season, to Gage Sturgill, and Caden Hill. What a kid! That kid came up big in that play, found his tight end Jace Ruggles, for a 4-yard pass, and it was kind of a jump ball situation. I mean, there was massive coverage in the end zone, and Ruggles was able to leap up, get that ball in the last second. They had 6.5 seconds. Hill rolls out, scrambles, buys his receiver some time, and lo and behold, man, they pull it off. So it was a packed house, and it was basically Mudsock Part 2. I'm not a Cubs fan, but holy cow, that was
Well,
pretty
pretty cool for Fishers, because this had been the team, the rival. You lose to them 3 years in a row in the sectional, and that has to be pretty fulfilling. What was the sort of the scene like, Rich, after the game's over? I'm sure that must have been quite a mob down there.
It was pretty special. Obviously for the Fishers side, HSC, they thought they had it. They really did. You give your opponent 2 minutes, you get them on 4th down. Last play of the game, you think, okay, we're going to take a timeout. We're going to have good defensive coverage, and they did. And they almost actually had an interception in the end zone earlier. To almost take away that opportunity, and not on that drive, or actually it was on that drive. It was before the goal, 1st and goal. I apologize, because there was so much that happened in this game. It was, 44-41. It was a shootout. I mean, we're talking 12 touchdowns combined, 2 interceptions. There's just massive, big plays. I was looking through the stats. Thankfully, both sides are able to provide us with some information on that. And I mean, you're talking rushing, just for Fishers was 185 yards, 255 for HSC. Passing for Fishers, 238, 251 for HSC. There was some offense going on today, and both these teams wanted this game. And like you said, it was the 3rd time in the playoffs that they had met. And Fishers, John Anthony Hall, I talked to him after the game, and he said that they're changing the culture in a way. The boys basketball won state, the success of the track and field team, and now them winning this football sectional. It's as if the senior class and these juniors are trying to do something here. And, my hat's off to both sides, really, because HSC played a great game. I mean, Chandler Weston, quarterback for HSC, he played his heart out. And A.Z. Wallace, running back who was hurt most of this year, came back, and he had a phenomenal game. He rushed for 165 yards and 4 touchdowns tonight.
Wow.
Weston threw for 2 touchdowns and 251 yards. So I mean, it wasn't like HSC gave this thing away. They were fighting all the way to the end too. So it was just a matter of who had the ball last and who was going to execute. And lo and behold, you figured John Anthony Hall would be the guy, right? And no, it was actually, a tight end.
Yeah.
Who had a special moment tonight. So it was really cool. It was, obviously there were a lot of heavy emotions on both sides. Some of those penalty calls, I think, were excessive celebration for unsportsmanlike, nothing personal. It was just a rivalry game. The type of thing you want to see on a Friday night for football in high school.
And Rich, looking at your story here, you mentioned a couple of those stats. A.Z. Wallace, like 35 rushes for 165. He's a workhorse for HSC. But you look at the other side too. I was going to ask you, Ryan Timbolombu had 23 carries for 150 and 2 TDs. He had a big game last time they played each other. And then John Anthony Hall, who always seems to have huge games, and no matter who they're playing, 11 catches for 194 and 2 TDs. So another huge game for Hall. But and you mentioned Caden Hill too, and his stats were also very good. He's a guy who's gotten better throughout the year. You mentioned the injury to Sturgill, and that's a big loss for them. But Hill seems to be getting better every week as well. But how was that? That Fishers offense tonight? Obviously, they scored a lot of points, but how were they able to do so well offensively?
It was a balanced approach. At first, it was ground and pound. Ryan kind of came out just like the regular season game, and just kind of went at him, straight forward, and a lot of 3rd down conversions by running early on for Fishers, and then they kind of gradually incorporated that passing attack because you suck them in with the run, you kind of load up that box. Then it created some one-on-one opportunities for John Anthony Hall, and he had 1 touchdown with 73 yards. That was a breakdown one-on-one coverage, and he was able to take it down the sideline. And the DB actually lost his footing, and Hall in stride took that ball in and went down and got that. And that was in the second half. And it was during the frenzy that was the score fest, tonight. And so yeah, it was a balanced attack really by Fishers. I was really impressed by that. I was wondering if they were just going to stick to the ground attack. It kind of worked the first time in the regular season, with some big splash, chunk yardage passing plays. But instead, they really did kind of set them up early and then spread it out and balanced it out. And in that final drive, there was, I believe, Hill had 7 completions in that final drive. So as you can see, when you look at his final stats, I mean, he was 15 of 26. So almost half of his completions were right there.
Wow.
So they were kind of utilizing that passing attack when they needed it. And it came in handy big time. And their defense was phenomenal too. I mean, that was the other thing too. Their defense, really kind of stymied HSE in that third quarter. And it wasn't until the fourth that things got really tense again and tight. And HSE led at halftime too, so it was Fishers led first, HSE kind of tied it, and then Fishers went back up, and then they took the lead late in the second half or the first half, and then it was just a sprint mad dash to the end there. So it was something to see.
Crazy game. Again, 44-41, Fishers win. So that means Fishers now will play Westfield. Good opportunity, obviously. It doesn't matter who you're playing now, but obviously good opportunity against a really good team. Westfield may be, you could argue maybe they're playing as well as anybody right now. And that game earlier this year, that was a few weeks ago, Westfield won that game 46-12. But once again, this is a different Fishers team. I expect that game will be different this time around. I think Fishers will play them tougher this time. But yeah, great opportunity. Good for Kurt Funk and that program that has kind of been trying to push over that, get over this edge and beat HSC finally, and then finally they were able to do it. But Rich, appreciate you coming on with me and talking about the football game tonight.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry about the darkness. I'm actually in my car. I filed my story, so I'm doing the reporter thing here. Obviously, you're in a press box. I probably should have done that, but
well, I thought I was going to be in my car, but I'm decided to stay up here and do it here, and I might be locked in here, but so I may be calling somebody for help. But yeah, appreciate you, Rich.
Climb a fence to get out of there. If you do, be careful.
Yeah. I've done it before.
All right, buddy. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Well, thanks to everybody for joining me tonight. Mark Janes, Brian Alt, Greg Rakestraw, Rich Torres, all 4 of those guys for coming on here and joining me and talking some high school football. Just real quick here, wanted to go through the local scores again tonight. Great night of football, man. The weather was outstanding tonight. It just a nice chilly sectional title night. Not much wind, not much no rain obviously or anything, but going through 6A locally, Westfield 35-13 over Zionsville. Fishers beats HSC 44-41. Brownsburg, that huge comeback, 38-35 over Ben Davis at Ben Davis. Lawrence North 24-7. That was my game I had tonight over Cathedral. Warren Central 48-0 over Perry Meridian. And Center Grove 52-14 over Franklin Central. Again, you can find all information at IndyStar.com on a lot of these games, all these games locally. In 5A, Decatur Central beat Plainfield 35-7. That's our only 5A team left, actually, in our area, which is kind of strange. You get in 4A, New Pal beats Pendleton Heights 41-7. Lebanon lost tonight to Huntington North 31-28 in overtime. Chatard beat Roncalli 28-24. Martinsville in a shootout with Greenwood wins 35-31. They'll play Evansville Rights next week. In Class 3A, our only local game, Tri-West beat Guerin Catholic 21-12. So Tri-West are only 3A team left. They'll play at Batesville next week in the regional in Class 3A. Also, not locally, but Heritage Hills beat Evansville Memorial tonight. That was number 2 Heritage Hills beat number 1 Evansville Memorial in 3A, 38-24. In Class 2A, Lutheran beats Monrovia 31-7, and Lapel beat Triton Central 27-17. So Lapel and Lutheran will play next week in a 2A regional. And in 1A, the only local team left is Sheridan. They beat Cloverdale 42-14. So the Fighting Bud Wrights continue on in Class 1A. So that'll do it for tonight. Appreciate everybody joining us and coming on and helping me talk some football tonight. Again, this will be up on our YouTube page here. So But once again, thanks a lot, everybody. We'll talk to you next. Again, go to IndyStar.com. We'll have a lot more coverage and stats and everything. We'll have players of the week coming out, and obviously a lot more as that goes. So again, my game tonight, Lawrence North 24-7. The number one Wildcats move on to play Brownsburg next week, and I don't know where all these. I'm almost 100% sure that game is at Brownsburg though next week. So that should be a fun atmosphere and a great game. But again, thanks again, and we'll talk to you next time.